Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Good evening. Tonight, we find ourselves at a crossroads in history, witnessing events that will be studied for generations to come. Today is October 6th, 2025. The world is holding its breath as the headlines grow more urgent by the hour. From the corridors of power in Washington to the embattled streets of the Middle East, crises are converging, and at the very center stands the American presidency. The decisions made here ripple outward, shaping the fate of millions. President Trump's second term has unleashed a wave of political and geopolitical turmoil that few could have predicted. The nation is divided, and the world is watching with a mix of anxiety and disbelief. The aftershocks are global, reverberating through major capitals, shaking financial markets, and deepening the suffering in the war-torn streets of Gaza. Every day brings new headlines, each more alarming than the last. This is more than just another turbulent chapter in American politics. It's a stress test of global governance. International institutions are being pushed to their limits, forced to respond to a world order in flux. Can the U.S. Constitution withstand a president determined to test its boundaries? Legal scholars and judges are grappling with questions that once seemed unthinkable, as the very fabric of American democracy is stretched. Is peace in the Middle East even possible under such unpredictable leadership? Negotiators and diplomats are working overtime, but the path to stability has never seemed more uncertain. These questions are not abstract. They impact global security, the economy, and the daily lives of billions. From the price of oil to the safety of our streets, the consequences are real and immediate. Across the globe, ordinary people are debating, protesting, and searching for answers. Social media is ablaze with speculation and fear, as citizens everywhere try to make sense of the chaos. This essay will unravel the chaos, examining the key moments and far-reaching impacts of President Trump's actions. We'll trace the timeline of events that have brought us to this critical juncture. We'll hear from experts, historians, analysts, and insiders who are struggling to make sense of this unprecedented moment. Their insights will help us understand not just what is happening, but why. The narrative begins in early 2025, as the first tremors of this extraordinary term began to shake the foundations of government. The mood in Washington was tense, with uncertainty hanging in the air. President Trump's team arrived with a radical agenda, viewing long-standing governance norms as obstacles to be overcome. Their approach was bold, controversial, and often confrontational. This set the stage for a series of confrontations that quickly escalated into full-blown crises, pulling the world into a period of profound uncertainty and upheaval. As the world watches, we are all left waiting, wondering where this path will lead and what the future holds for America and the world. The second Trump presidency began with a flurry of executive actions, each more sweeping than the last. Within days, the administration issued orders that bypassed traditional legislative processes, signaling a dramatic shift in how power would be wielded from the White House. These early moves were not just routine policy changes. They were bold statements of intent, designed to reshape the very structure of American governance. The legal system, long a pillar of stability, was suddenly thrust into turmoil. Judges and legal scholars scrambled to interpret the sweeping directives while lawsuits flooded the courts, challenging the administration's authority at every turn. One of the most explosive actions was an attempt to end birthright citizenship by executive decree. This unprecedented move ignited a firestorm of protest and triggered a monumental court battle, with civil rights groups and state governments lining up on both sides of the issue. Meanwhile, the administration sought to seize Congress's power of the purse. By withholding critical funds, it effectively crippled key federal agencies, leaving government workers in limbo and disrupting essential services across the nation. These actions directly challenged the separation of powers, a foundational principle of American democracy. The balance between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches was thrown into question, raising alarms among constitutional experts. The administration also expanded its authority over tariffs, launching aggressive trade wars without seeking congressional approval. This move unsettled global markets and left American businesses uncertain about the future. Adding to the confusion, Elon Musk's ambiguous government role blurred the lines between public and private interests. His influence in both sectors raised questions about accountability and transparency at the highest levels. Collectively, These actions amounted to what many called a constitutional crisis. The very definition of presidential power was being rewritten in real time, with consequences that would echo for generations. The strategy was unmistakable: centralize authority in the Oval Office, diminishing the roles of Congress and the courts. This consolidation of power marked a turning point in the nation's political history. As these domestic battles raged, the administration's bold approach set a volatile tone for its global agenda, leaving allies and adversaries alike uncertain about America's next move. Amid a storm of domestic controversies and mounting political pressure at home, the administration found itself searching for a way to shift the national conversation. With headlines dominated by protests and partisan clashes in Washington, the White House urgently needed a new focus, one that could potentially unite a divided nation, or at least distract from its internal struggles. Attention soon turned to the escalating conflict in Gaza, where violence and humanitarian crises had captured the world's attention. The situation on the ground was dire, with civilians caught in the crossfire and international calls for intervention growing louder by the day. In a dramatic move on the world stage, President Trump took to the podium at the United Nations in September 2025. Before a global audience, he unveiled a sweeping new peace plan, promising a bold path forward for the region. The proposal called not only for an immediate end to hostilities, but also for the launch of a comprehensive dialogue between all parties involved. It was an ambitious blueprint, aiming to address both the immediate violence and the deeper, long-standing grievances fueling the conflict. Trump asserted that he had secured backing from key Israeli and Arab leaders, projecting an image of confidence and control. He insisted that this coalition could bring about a historic breakthrough, and he was eager to showcase his diplomatic prowess on the international stage. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, facing intense scrutiny at home and abroad, was scheduled to meet with Trump in New York. The stakes were high, and the urgency of their discussions underscored the fragile nature of the proposed peace. Yet just days earlier, leaked reports had surfaced suggesting that the administration was considering a far more radical approach: a plan to occupy Gaza militarily. This revelation sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and raised serious concerns about Washington's true intentions. Humanitarian organizations and key U.S. allies quickly voiced their skepticism, questioning whether the peace plan was genuine or simply a cover for more aggressive policies. The credibility of the administration's approach was now under intense scrutiny. Netanyahu, meanwhile, found himself caught in a political trap. Torn between international expectations and domestic pressures, with his own political future hanging in the balance. On the other side, Hamas leaders publicly denied receiving any formal proposal, casting doubt on the administration's claims and fueling further confusion about the peace process. This disconnect between public statements and private negotiations only deepened the uncertainty, adding another layer of volatility to an already unstable region. The world watched anxiously, unsure of what would come next. As the dust settled on the UN announcement, the international community remained deeply skeptical of Washington's pronouncements, wary of promises that seemed to shift with the political winds. The fate of the peace plan and the region hung in the balance. While peace talks occur, Gaza's reality is a nightmare. Israeli offensives intensify, with tanks pushing into Gaza City. Airstrikes target high-rise buildings, forcing evacuations. The human toll is staggering, with deaths and malnutrition rising. Hamas reports losing contact with hostages, blaming bombardments. Humanitarian efforts are blocked, with aid workers denied access. The conflict's systematic denial of aid leads to accusations of war crimes. Trump's approach to Gaza is part of a broader stance against international cooperation. His UN speech was a declaration against the post-World War II global order. He questioned the UN's relevance and dismissed climate change consensus. The administration denied visas to international representatives, isolating the US. This undermined the UN's principle as a global forum. Trump's rhetoric framed immigration as a national security threat. The UN faces a crisis of relevance, paralyzed by US actions. Trump's disdain for the rules-based order has tangible consequences. Weakening institutions like the UN creates a dangerous power vacuum. The America First doctrine reshapes the global landscape, straining alliances. Key U.S. allies recognized Palestine, isolating Israel and the U.S. This diplomatic realignment reflects a world adapting to U.S. unpredictability. Trump's protectionist policies sparked trade wars, forcing new coalitions. Allies question NATO's value and bolster regional ties. New partnerships form, creating a more fragmented world. The Cold War's clear lines are gone, replaced by shifting interests. Middle power nations gain influence, but stability is lost. The world enters an uncertain geopolitical era due to Washington's choices. Washington's chaos has a damaging counterpart in the global economy. Trump's tariffs and trade wars create uncertainty for businesses worldwide. The America First approach disrupts decades-old supply chains. U.S. manufacturers face rising costs and farmers face retaliatory tariffs. Internationally, U.S. tariffs threaten economic stability. The IMF warns of trade friction threatening global growth. Economic instability fuels political extremism and nationalism. Trade wars erode trust and shared interest, making the world poorer. The economic turmoil is a symptom of broader global relations breakdown. Experts express alarm over the Trump presidency's trajectory. Foreign policy veterans warn of dismantling global stability. Constitutional scholars see threats to the rule of law. Economists highlight trade policies injecting uncertainty into the economy. Humanitarian leaders focus on the human cost, especially in Gaza. The international community has a moral obligation to prevent atrocities. The U.S. is seen as an enabler of global crises. These voices remind us of the life and death consequences of political decisions. The world watches as the story unfolds, with vigilance our collective responsibility. This story matters because the principles under assault are global foundations. The U.S. constitutional crisis affects all democracies. The Gaza crisis reveals the fragility of shared humanity. Economic turmoil impacts global stability and prosperity. The America First doctrine threatens decades of economic integration. This is a defining moment for the 21st century. Citizens must stay informed and engaged, supporting democratic norms. The story is being written every day, with vigilance our responsibility. The path forward is uncertain, but the stakes are high for everyone.